Well, the violence has somewhat escalated, but it's more like it's just kind of out in the open right now. I'm in a good mood because police officers survived getting shot at, and they survived getting shot at for a couple reasons. First thing I'm going to mention is the Dallas shooting back in 2015, where the cops were ambushed by a guy with basically an SKS rifle. He got to a high angle of attack in a parking garage, and he just rained lead down on a bunch of cops who were just basically standing around and killed. I think he ended up killing 7 people. And there was like a firefight after that. It was bad situation. The reason why those cops were basically completely unprepared and unequipped for something like that is because the Dallas mayor said that, don't show up with your military gear and your military rifles or anything like that. Don't do that because that might, incite the violence from the crowd, right? And then just sit back and let the crowd loot and destroy the city. And that led to basically a bunch of dead officers who, at best, had handguns to return fire on a dude who ambushed them with a rifle. Total mess. This time, Louisville, all the cops I saw out basically earlier in the day and the night, they all had Class 4 body armor on, they had ballistics helmets on, and they had their weapons with them. Not only did they have sidearms, they also had access to their rifles and shit like that, too. I saw that kind of on and off. Once the shooting started, they basically put away their non-lethal stuff and whipped out their rifles. They are alive because someone didn't have their head up their ass and tell them that, oh yeah, you have to be this basically unarmored and disarmed because you don't want to intimidate the crowd. No, these guys are alive because they were wearing Class 4 body armor. That's, these cops are ready. And they caught the guy, and more bloodshed did not occur because the cops are ready. So, props to the Louisville police. Props to FBI SWAT for showing up. Props to the Bay State Police who showed up. You guys are ready. You guys were equipped. There's only so much you can do when there's a basically massive amount of rioting and violence like this. And cops are not dead because you took the proper precautions. Props to them. Now, there was 4 major places that fighting occurred last night. D.C., Louisville, obviously, Seattle, and Portland. And one of the things I saw was the fire bombs, the Molotov cocktails. Now, what is a Molotov cocktail? If you're not familiar, or maybe you are familiar, Molotov cocktail is essentially a glass bottle filled with gasoline or some other flammable liquid like a kerosene, and there's a rag stuffed in there. You light the rag on fire, you throw it, the bottle shatters, and then there's fire everywhere, right? It was first coined the Molotov cocktail in Finland when they were fighting the communists. That's a whole other long story. Russians are the ones who basically didn't like getting lit on fire. They thought they would do that themselves, so they basically started using that against the Germans when World War II happened. Molotov cocktails have been around pretty much as long as fire accelerants have been around, and glass bottles have been common, right? Now, when the Molotovs have been thrown basically in recent times. When I say recent times, I mean like over the last couple months in these riots, we see basically a total mix of everything from wine bottles to just even plastic containers I've seen, because the idea being like, oh, whatever, it starts the fire, right? That stuff is pretty effective against buildings. It's effective against people in soft vehicles, patrol cars. Basically, if you want to start a fire, you throw it, and it's a pretty good area denial because it creates a gasoline fire on the ground wherever you throw it. You see the old videos of the stuff being thrown, goes flying, hits the ground, splash everywhere. There's a bunch of fire, and then there's kind of a slow burn on the ground, right? The cops have gotten hurt by them. If it lands on you, it probably won't kill you, but it'll probably give you third-degree burns. It's an area denial weapon. It's designed to basically create enough fire and chaos where you can use that to your advantage. And in the rioters' case, they just want to light stuff on fire, right? But there was something different about the ones that were used last night in these different locations. They were engineered differently. The explosion was much more massive, much wider of a fireball, and the fire stuck around a lot stickier. Now, the people threw the firebombs, the cops were going chasing those people. Now, those people might not necessarily be Antifa, because Antifa likes to hand off weapons, or BLM guys, they hand off weapons to some idiot who will throw it for them. That way they don't get arrested, and then maybe some cops die. But these Molotovs particularly, which they're firebombs, I mean, they were blowing up, and it was significantly different and significantly more powerful explosive than what was happening, what had been thrown basically for the last couple months. Someone's manufacturing these. And by that, I mean, they've trained and they've standardized on what they're doing. There's a couple different things they could do differently. They could change the basically the content of what's in the bottles. Any liquid will do, but you can use anything from liquid propane, liquid hydrogen, or what I suspect more likely is essentially napalm, which is basically you make that from gasoline. You can look it up. I'm not gonna get banned from YouTube by telling you how to make napalm, but you can look it up online, and it's something people can make. They use that. Perhaps they mix a little bit of oxygen in there. They have a little oxygen tube, and they're making it airtight, and the fuse is different, or say the rag that they're tying is actually not connected. And you light that on fire, and then when the glass breaks, and then all of a sudden the oxygen's released and the fuel's released, and boom, it's like a little mini fuel air bomb going off. Possibly they're doing something like that. There's a lot of ways to modify the fire bombs, and there's a lot of ways to basically improve your Molotov cocktail. But the thing is normally, when you see this in mass riot situations, there's no uniform way to make a Molotov cocktail. You just fill a glass bottle with gasoline or whatever you have on hand, and then you throw it. When you put the rag in it, stuff light on fire, and you throw it. This was different. Someone's training them. Someone has standardized essentially the way these are being built to make them far more lethal and far more potent than they were in previous months. This is a major escalation in a lot of ways, but at the same time, it's kind of expected. There are significantly less Antifa members on the ground. Importantly, it's in Seattle, it's a little different because that's the hive of them. But in terms of what was showing up in Louisville, they were there, but they weren't as in as mass numbers as they were in previous situations. But they were showing up with brand new rifles, brand new body armor, and truckloads of equipment, and brand new firebombs. That's stuff that was manufactured. So the tactics have changed. Somebody, someone's training them. Somebody there knows what they're doing, and they basically have built a better bomb. You don't see that kind of sophistication from spontaneous mobs, right? This is an organized group. Now, it's kind of like the Chechens with the pressure cooker bombs, right? They've used pressure cooker bombs before. We just happened to deal with the one in Boston, but that was like a standardized thing that they trained people to do. These firebombs that are being built, my asthma's been really bad today. Guess what? Someone's training them, teaching them how to do this. This is not a skill that spontaneously everybody all of a sudden is making better Molotovs. No. These are basically being built specifically for the purpose of distributing to these crowds to throw at the cops. And someone's training them, right? Is it an ex-European communist anarchist terrorist, or is it somebody who's had experience with this, or it's just somebody who just, is smart and innovative, and they're able to basically figure out, oh, wait, we can make these a lot more effective. But the point being, they are doing it, and they're distributing these weapons. I suspect they will basically use this strategy to continue distributing other types of weapons in the future. It's kind of like when you saw their foam shields and stuff show up, and it was all like, pre-painted and all reset. Yeah, someone has to manufacture these things. It's not stuff that just shows up organically. The feds have been pretty good about cracking down on it, particularly stopping the equipment trucks. But firebombs are, a 6-pack of firebombs takes up like a 6-pack of wine or something. They're a lot easier to conceal, and you're not going to be delivering them with your basically riot equipment. You're going to be delivering that essentially with an independent weapons smuggler, because you don't want somebody getting picked up and then losing everything. You want to have the lethal stuff separate. But take a look, watch the video, see these people showing up earlier in the night with the body armor and the rifles, and now we know they have basically more sophisticated firebombs. These are pretty serious people. We like to laugh at them because they get like hit by cars at like roadblocks they set up and stuff. But they're not dumb. They're not messing around. They're adapting to everything that's going on, and you can tell. Just the firebombs. The same type of firebomb being used multiple times in multiple different cities. That's called standard manufacturing. This is something a terrorist organization does. This is not something that is they figured out how to do it better and then they just started doing it better. No, somebody had to set some standards and give them a guide. Antifa used to publish their guides and stuff. You could like look it up and be like, oh, this is the Antifa handbook, and it was scary, but also kind of funny because it was so cheaply done. I wouldn't be surprised if you found this stuff online, or if you didn't find this stuff online, because they might be trying to keep it secret now. we'll see what happens going forward. I'm sure DHS definitely took note of the fact that the weapon sophistication was a lot higher, especially when somebody's supplying them body armor and rifles. Someone's doing that to them. Because, for instance, at a 2A rally, a bunch of people show up with like body armor and rifles, and they're like, rah, 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 the government, right? And then no violence happens. Well, it's because these people, they paid for their weapons and they paid for their body armor, and they're not ready. They're not gonna expend it in a fight with the state. They're just not violent people. They're not looking for insurrection, right? And you see they have different colors and different things and stuff like that. And the rifles are in different conditions and all different types. But if you saw what was showing up in Louisville yesterday, brand new black body armor, and these people they're not out there buying it. They don't know where to go to get body armor, right? You know, they're not calling up a AR-500 to get a body armor delivered and whatnot. It's someone's supplying it to them, because they're all the same color. I think I saw one tan set of body armor, but the Antifa people they was basically all black. The rifles they have, they're brand new. Yeah. These are not people who are like shooters bringing stuff from home, because then your rifle doesn't look brand new. Something's going on here. Something's going on. I hope the feds get to the bottom of it. I hope people start waking up and not taking this anymore. This is Joe Biden's election campaign. It's basically cause as much chaos as possible until people, the riots will continue until basically the House and Senate flip and the White House gets into the Democrats' hands. Some people say like, oh, well, will the violence continue? Well, it will in some places like, Oregon and like Portland and Seattle. But in general, it's probably going to stop, because just like, basically the usefulness of Antifa, once they're no longer useful to the DNC, they're just going to crack down and crush them. Of course, Antifa's got a plan to deal with that. So, if best thing we can do right now is keep obviously President Trump in, and that way at least the power struggle is on the lower level, and it's not like the White House fighting with the far left in the House with Antifa and states and terrorists. It's just whatever. Leave them powerless and in flailing around. That's just a much better option than giving these people power. Basically, I had said this before, but it's like, don't reward them for the violence, because if you do that, you're setting a precedent. And then, you won't like it when the right gets violent. When the right gets violent, no matter what country it is, it's amazing what just one pissed off person can do. And I'm not endorsing it. I'm just saying it's like there's a lot more independent actors who will think of some a lot less kind stuff than even what Antifa is doing, because at that point they're not going to worry about the optics. They're just going to worry about whatever they want to destroy. So that's all. Stay safe. And if you see somebody throwing a firebomb when you're at a peaceful protest, get the hell out of there. And I'm not going to cry for you if you get your ass beat. That's all. So, yay Louisville cops being alive. So, good job, guys.